I would suggest that you read the story of the Transfiguration of Christ. It's found in 3 Gospels, Matthew 16:24 through chapter 17, verse 9, Mark 9, 1 through 8, and Luke 9, 23 to 46. In the past, I did a video on the Transfiguration prophecy. There is another reference to the Transfiguration of Christ that Peter gives us, 2 Peter 1, 16 through 19, and this is the passage that I want to read today. The Transfiguration of Christ was prophetic of the end times. And if we're at the end times, there's something about that passage, about the Transfiguration, what happened on that day, and we know what feast day that was, that prophetically the disciples who saw Jesus being transfigured, his face shone like the sun, he was wearing garments that were whiter than anybody could possibly bleach them. They're on this high mountain. They see Moses and Elijah standing with the Lord, and they're having a conversation, and then a cloud encompasses all of them, and there's this voice out of the cloud saying, "This is my beloved son, listen to him." This is prophecy. This is prophecy about the end times, because before the Transfiguration happened, Jesus said, "There are some of you standing here who will not taste death until you see the kingdom of God coming with power." Jesus is standing there with Moses and with Elijah, who I believe are the 2 witnesses. They are the 2 lampstands that stand beside the Lord of all the earth. This is a prophecy that we see hints of in Zechariah chapter 4 and in Revelation chapter 11, speaking of the 2 witnesses, one of whom said it wasn't going to rain for 3.5 years and it didn't, and the other one who changed water to blood, Moses and Elijah. Okay, these are the 2 witnesses who stand beside the Lord of all the earth. Now, my understanding is the 2 witnesses are the ones who are going to be charged with setting up the end time tabernacle. It's not going to be a building per se. It's going to be just like the tabernacle of David, just like what we see going on in heaven. And remember, God told Moses that you build the earthly tabernacle just like you saw it on the mountain, just like I showed it to you. The earthly temple is a reflection of the heavenly one. So this wonderful privilege we've been given in the book of Revelation is we actually are able to see, along with John, the heavenly temple. We can see what's going on up there. And we know that what we see going on up there is the same thing that will be going on earth with regard to the temple. An ark, golden altar of incense, it's a tabernacle, and there is a priesthood sitting in front of the throne of God, but it's not the Aaronic priesthood. It's not like after Aaron. So we know that the temple that is going to be set up during the last days is after the order of Melchizedek. It's more like the tabernacle of David. So we're not looking for sacrificing animals. We're not looking at the rituals that are associated with the Mosaic law. We're looking for something totally different. The temple that we see in heaven and what we see going on there and who is there, that is going to be replicated on earth during the last days. So because it's a tabernacle, it's a tent, it can be set up over a period of just a few days. We're not looking at something that's going to take weeks and months to build. My understanding is that this prophecy of the Transfiguration, and it's a prophecy, 2 Peter 1, verses 16 through 19, "For we did not follow cleverly devised myths, when we made known to you the power and the parousia, the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. We were eyewitnesses of his majesty." They were taken into the future, in a moment of time, into the future, and they saw the glory of Christ. In fact, what they saw was what John saw in Revelation chapter 1. Face shining like the sun, clothes just like bright and white. And then it says in verse 17, "For when he received honor and glory from God the Father, and the voice was borne to him by the majestic glory, 'This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased.' We ourselves heard this very voice born from heaven, for we were with him on the holy mountain. And we have the prophetic word more fully confirmed, to which you will do well to pay attention as to a lamp shining in a dark place until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts. So Peter included the transfiguration of Christ as part of his testimony and his witness, and he emphasized to his readers that he wasn't making up a myth or a story about Jesus' future glory. He said, I saw it. I was there on the holy mountain. He heard the voice of the Father testify about Jesus. He saw the kingdom come. And in his letter, Peter doesn't say anything about Elijah or Moses. His focus is solely on Jesus, whom the Father said, this is my beloved Son. Listen to him. So the transfiguration of Christ was prophetic. It's a prophecy of something that's coming. And those of us who are living during the end times, we should look at the transfiguration and see, is this telling us anything about the end times? Is this telling us anything about the arrival of Elijah and Moses? Is this telling us anything about the day we can expect to possibly see them? Is this even telling us that Jesus is going to appear with them on the earth during the last days, maybe even prior to the rapture of the male child? So these are some questions that we really need to answer. Does the story of the transfiguration have prophetic significance? Peter said it did. Jesus said that there are some standing there who wouldn't taste death until they saw the kingdom of God coming with power. In Matthew's account of the transfiguration, what Jesus says is this: Jesus commanded them, that is Peter, James, and John, to tell no one the vision. Tell no one the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead. What happened, I think, at that time was something similar that happened to John when he was receiving the visions that are contained in the book of Revelation. He was transported through space and time. That's what being in the Spirit is all about. It's like when Ezekiel was in the Spirit, and the Spirit took him to Jerusalem, and the Spirit took him here and there. That when you're in the Spirit and you have these apocalyptic visions, what you're seeing is something at another point in time from when you're living. You're seeing something. You're experiencing something that is in the future in this case. Okay, it's a vision. You're transported through space and time. I did a video on Ezekiel's wheel, Ezekiel chapter 1. So I said earlier that it's very likely that the transfiguration took place on the Day of Atonement. One of the things that's interesting about the Day of Atonement is that is sort of considered the day when God and man meet together. So the high priest would go into beyond the veil into the Holy of Holies and would meet with the Lord. It was the one day of the year when God and man met together. The priest met with God, and the blood was poured out on the ark. On the day Jesus was baptized, which I believe was also the Day of Atonement, God spoke. He interjected himself into the situation. God and man met together. And remember, John the Baptist was a priest. His dad was a priest. And God communicated, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And then at the Transfiguration, same thing. There's a cloud, and God is meeting with Moses, Elijah, Jesus, and the three apostles who are there with him. So I'm going to go over real quickly the three fall feasts. So the first fall feast is the Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah. So this feast is the day of shouting, according to the Strong's Hebrew here, 8643. Teruah means a shout, a blast, an alarm, sound of a trumpet. This is the warning that we've arrived at a spiritual inflection point, that God is about to start up with one of his prophetic activities. Okay, in the first century, it was the birth of Christ, his life, his death, his resurrection. The Bethlehem star arrived on the Feast of Trumpets back in the day, and also John the Baptist. He came shouting. He's the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. He gave that Yom Teruah shout, the day of shouting. The Day of Atonement is a few days later, about 10 days later, and it's called Yom Kippur, and this was the holiest day of the year. And like I said earlier, there were 2 times at Jesus' first coming where he, I believe, fulfilled different aspects, different prophetic aspects of the Day of Atonement, the day that he was baptized in the Jordan, and also on the day of the Transfiguration. And this year, Yom Kippur is going to be on October 2nd, 3rd. So then after that, we have the Feast of Tabernacles, also called Sukkot. And this is a very joyous feast, and many people, including myself, believe that Jesus was born over the Feast of Tabernacles, that he was born on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, and then that he was given to God, circumcised, and named on the 8th day. The Feast of Tabernacles is 7 days long with an 8th day at the end. And this year, the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, is going to begin on October 7th. And one of the things that sort of made me sit up and take notice is the idea that this October 7th is the anniversary of that massacre in Israel. Maybe something interesting will be happening there. So the Feast of Trumpets this year is going to fall on the same day that it, on the Gregorian calendar, that it fell on in 2017, when we had our end time Feast of Trumpets wake-up call with the Revelation 12 sign, that astronomical alignment, that once in 7,000 year alignment that took place in the starry heavens. So in the first century, there was the Star of Bethlehem. The star appeared in the sky, and then John the Baptist came 30 years later as the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. And now we've had the starry sign of the Revelation 12, sign of the woman, the great sign. Are we going to be having people, our version of John the Baptist, perhaps even Elijah, show up during the Feast of Trumpets this year? I don't know, but I'm going to be watching, because I have a feeling something highly significant is going to happen over this Feast of Trumpets, over Yom Teruah, that will sound the alarm if you're a believer and you're watching and waiting for Christ's return. So I'm going to make a little timeline here. So 2017, we had the Revelation 12 sign. Here we are at 2025. And again, this was on 9/23. And here we are again on 9/23, over the Feast of Trumpets, same feast. Are we watching for something to happen? This was the first sign that we had. Is there going to be something happening on that day right there? It's very possible. I'm looking for something to happen on that day. Not sure what, but I know that when it happens, those of us who are watching are going to understand what it is. Next, we come to the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, and this is where I believe the transfiguration of Christ is going to come into play. This is where the prophecy may be fulfilled. And again, I'm just telling you the things that I'm thinking about, and none of this is, thus saith the Lord. This is how I'm looking at the passage of the Transfiguration and putting it into a timeline, because it was a vision about the end, about the coming of Christ, when God's plan of redemption is going to start back up again. Okay, so the Revelation 12 sign actually put us in the book of Revelation. We're waiting for the next sign, which is the sign of the dragon. Right around Halloween is when the days of Noah begin, and so I would expect that the sign of the dragon would take place right here. This is the second sign of Revelation 12, and I believe it's in conjunction with the days of Noah, Halloween, which commemorated the flood. and I've talked about this in a lot of my other videos. I go into the days of Noah in my book, Convergence. All right, so we've got the Feast of Trumpets for 2025, same day, 8 years later. Okay. The next feast is the Day of Atonement. Okay, Day of Atonement. And I believe that this is the day that the Transfiguration prophecy is going to be fulfilled. It's right here on the Day of Atonement, which this year is October 2nd. So, right around there, okay, plus or minus 24 hours. That's how I do this stuff. So right around October 2nd is the Day of Atonement. What Peter and James and John saw that day was thrusting them into the future on a future Day of Atonement. And the fact that the two witnesses are there, Moses and Elijah, lets me know that this is prior to what we call the abomination of desolation. Okay, the abomination of desolation, when the man of sin goes into the temple, the tabernacle, and declares that he's God. So what might this look like for us? Well, there would be some kind of an alarm sounded, something happening on around the 23rd to 25th of 2025. And then on the Day of Atonement, what would happen is the two witnesses would show up and Jesus would show up with them. Now, I know a lot of people teach that Jesus does not actually show up to the earth until his glorious second coming. But that isn't what the book of Revelation says. Revelation gives us a number of times when Jesus is going to actually show up on the earth. Okay, and because people do not understand this particular angel that they see in the book of Revelation, the angel wrapped in a cloud with the rainbow over his head, the angel from the rising sun with the seal of the living God, the glorious angel who cries out, Babylon has fallen. All of these are Jesus during the second coming on the earth. My understanding is Jesus can show up on the earth, and he can show up here even before we are raptured. Okay, even before the male child is caught up to God and to his throne. Before that. So it's possible that believers could be changed from mortal to immortal and caught up to heaven, the rapture, the male child, and all of that over the Feast of Tabernacles. But I'm seeing this as less and less likely. And I'm actually seeing this right here of believers being changed and caught up during the days of Noah. Okay, remember Noah went into the ark, God closed the door on the seventh day, the eighth day, it began to rain. Okay, so this would be 7 days with an eighth day, part of that pattern. And it's the last possible moment, and I think that's how Jesus works this stuff out. All right, so what I'm thinking here is that, remember how Peter said, it's good that we're here. We'll build 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Well, this is a hint, I believe, that the Feast of Tabernacles was about to begin. And so Peter was planning on having everybody stay there and celebrate the feast on the Mount of Transfiguration. And that gives us a hint that it's possible that during the end times, there will be tabernacles being set up. And in particular, a single tabernacle that is the tabernacle that eventually the Antichrist is going to go into. So the Feast of Tabernacles may be where the end time temple, which remember, it's a tent, is set up over the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, there are a lot of people setting up tents and tabernacles in Jerusalem at that time of year. So it would not look too strange for some people who are, the two witnesses, setting up an end time tabernacle. And then the ark goes into it and some golden altar of incense and stuff going into it. And will we see that? I think that by the time this stuff starts to happen, there's going to be a huge war, EMP, things are going to go downhill really, really fast. So would we see that? I don't know. But when we see bad things happening, we can understand the prophecy and realize that prophecy is being fulfilled, and actually know that over certain feasts we can expect certain things to happen. Malachi 3:1 says, "Behold, I send my messenger." And by the way, that's the Hebrew word for angel. A messenger and an angel are the same thing. "Behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me." And that's a reference to John the Baptist and possibly Elijah and Moses. "And the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come into his temple. And the messenger of the covenant," okay, the angel of the covenant, "in whom you delight, behold, he is coming." That's a reference to Jesus. Jesus is actually called an angel here, okay? He's not a created being, but he is a messenger. It's very possible that Jesus and the two witnesses will set up this tabernacle, actually the two witnesses and maybe some of the ones who are going to be among the 144,000 of Israel, setting up this tabernacle during the Feast of Tabernacles, and Jesus going into it. The thought occurred to me as well that the voice of God may be there as well, saying, "This is my beloved Son," or something to that effect. That the cloud may encompass this tabernacle, that the glory of God will appear there, that the glory of God will be there. And we don't know what's going to be happening in the land of Israel at that time. Israel may be being attacked. There's a lot of animosity toward Israel right now. And, we got the Gog-Magog invasion that may begin to happen. Hamas and some of these people who attacked these Israelis on October 7th. And by the way, this is the same date here, is October 7th. This is when this will start. They were attacked because of the red heifers, the red cows, the end time stuff. It's possible that on that anniversary of that event, there may be some other thing that happens. That's sort of how I see the transfiguration of Christ, the prophetic aspect of it, playing into the end time events. And as we get closer to the month of September and October, I think we're going to see either we're going to see events ramp up where this looks like it's definitely a possibility that these things might happen, especially if we see something highly significant happening on the Feast of Trumpets on Yom Teruah this year. If we see something that's very highly charged, that has a spiritual connotation to it, then I would think that it's very possible that the two witnesses will show up over here on the Day of Atonement with Christ, and that is when that prophecy of the Transfiguration will begin to be fulfilled. And it will include the erecting of some tabernacles, and one in particular, that would be the tabernacle of David, basically, where the ark will go and the golden altar of incense. And by the way, the tabernacle of David is not associated with Mount Moriah or the Temple Mount. That was all part of Solomon's deal after David had died. But for David, the tabernacle of David, where the ark was kept prior to the erection of Solomon's temple, was just a tent, and it was connected with Mount Zion. Okay, and we see Mount Zion, the 144,000 on Mount Zion. We see these people who are counted in the temple that's being measured, okay, in Revelation 11. So we don't have to have Mount Moriah or the Temple Mount. This can be set up like anywhere around Mount Zion. All right, so this is sort of my thinking. Will Christ appear during the fall feast? It's very possible that the Transfiguration prophecy, which was a vision of the future, a vision of the end times, that we could actually see some of that fulfilled. this year. And if not this year, then next year. And remember, the order of events never changes. The order of events are associated with these same feast days. And we just change the Gregorian date from year to year. If one feast cycle, if we go past it, well, then we know that we have to wait another year. So I'm really praying we don't have to wait another year. I think 2025 is looking pretty good. Now, I understand that this is not normal eschatology. This isn't what most people teach. But I'm just sharing what I see in the Bible, and I'm highlighting some things that aren't brought out. And part of the problem is we have, for people who actually have a particular eschatology that they hold on to, they have difficulty incorporating new information into an old timeline. And most people just don't want to work hard enough to unlearn some things and to relearn something new. So even though we always like novelty and something new, we don't really, not if it upsets something that is a deeply held belief. But there's nothing unscriptural or unbiblical about what I'm suggesting at all. Nothing about that at all that is not in the Bible that couldn't happen during the end times. All right, we know the end times are going to be full of supernatural events, and everything is just going to get a little strange the closer we approach to the end of days. And something that I didn't mention earlier is that when it comes to the plan that God has, He initiates everything. Okay, so when it comes to the Gog-Magog invasion, it says God puts the hooks in the jaws for Gog to come down. God initiates. And right here, if Jesus and the two witnesses show up on this day, God is going to be there too. This is my beloved Son. The voice again, the thunder, the rumbles. And for some people, they'll hear a voice, and other people will only say it thundered. Okay, but God initiates all of this. He's the one who is initiating all the different aspects of the plan of redemption, about His end time program for Jesus, for believers, for Israel, for the fallen angels, for everything. Okay, God is the one who is going to do that. So let me know what you think, and we'll see you on another video. Till then, have a blessed day.